26 feet beneath an ordinary suburban street in Las Vegas, there is a sky. It glows pink at dawn. It deepens to blue at midday. At night, hundreds of tiny lights blink on across a black ceiling, arranged into constellations that never move, never set, and never change. Because this sky was painted and wired by human hands almost 50 years ago. Beneath that artificial sky there is a lawn that has never felt rain, trees that have never grown a single leaf, a swimming pool, a putting green, a barbecue hidden inside a fake boulder, a dance floor, a guest house, an entire backyard, an entire world, sealed inside a concrete vault under the Nevada desert. The man who built it was one of the wealthiest executives in America. He had homes, planes, and more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. And he chose to live here. Underground. In the dark that he dressed up as daylight. He believed the world above was going to end. He wanted to be comfortable when it did. But the strangest part of this story isn't the bunker itself. It's what happened after its builder died down there in 1983. Who bought it, what they planned to do with it, and why a house designed to survive the apocalypse is now owned by people preparing for something even stranger than nuclear war. To understand any of it, you have to start at the top, at street level, where everything looks completely, deliberately normal. Drive down Spencer Street, a few minutes east of the Las Vegas Strip, and you'd never slow down. The neighborhood is quiet. Single-story homes, gravel yards, the occasional palm tree leaning over a block wall. The address, 3970, looks like a slightly oversized ranch house behind a gate. Desert sun. The hum of air conditioners. A plane sliding overhead toward the airport. Nothing about it asks for your attention, and that was always the point. The deception starts at the front door. Inside that house there are rooms, furniture, windows, a home that functions as a home, but it is also, in a sense, a lid. A 2-story decoy sitting on top of the real residence. Find the right staircase, descend past the point where a basement should end, and the temperature steadies. The sounds of the street fall away, and the walls open into something your brain genuinely struggles to process. You step out of a stairwell into a backyard. There is grass under your feet, artificial, springy, vacuumed rather than mowed. There are trees beside you, their trunks real bark, their canopies plastic. Ahead, a kidney-shaped swimming pool glitters under recessed lights. Beyond it, a pink and white house, a full house with a roof, windows, shutters, a front door, stands inside the cavern like a dollhouse in a shoebox. And wrapping around all of it on every wall, painted mountains roll into painted forests under that painted electric sky. The ceiling hangs somewhere overhead, disguised by darkness and starlight. The murals run a full 360 degrees, so no matter which direction you face, you're looking at a horizon. Stand by the pool long enough and your eyes start negotiating with you. You know you're underground. Your body isn't sure. People who visit describe the same creeping sensation. It feels like dusk on a still summer evening, just before the crickets start. Except the crickets never start. The air never moves. The light never changes unless someone flips a switch. 5 settings on that switch: day, dusk, evening, night, and one marked for the soft gray of early morning. Somebody designed a dial for the sunrise. Somebody decided what time it would be, forever. That somebody was a man named Girard Henderson. Jerry, to almost everyone, and his road to this cavern began not in Las Vegas, but in the most ordinary corner of corporate America imaginable. The cosmetics business. Henderson was a director of Avon Products, the door-to-door beauty empire, and his stake in the company made him spectacularly rich. By the 1960s, he was worth tens of millions of dollars at a time, when that meant private aircraft, ranches, foundations with his name on them. He sailed. He flew his own planes. He gave enormous sums to education and founded schools through his Alexander Dawson Foundation. By any normal measure, Jerry Henderson had won the 20th century. The problem was that Jerry Henderson did not trust the 20th century. He had lived through 2 world wars. He had watched the bombs fall on Hiroshima and Nagasaki from the safe distance of headlines. and then watched the safe distance evaporate as the Soviet Union built bombs of its own. And in October 1962, he, along with every other American, spent 13 days waiting to find out whether the Cuban Missile Crisis would end with negotiation or with mushroom clouds over American cities. For most people, that fear came and went in waves. They built backyard fallout shelters the size of closets, stocked them with canned peaches, and tried not to think about it. Henderson thought about it constantly, but where ordinary men saw a hole in the ground with cots and a Geiger counter, Henderson saw a failure of imagination. His conviction, stated openly, repeatedly, in print, was that there was no reason survival had to mean suffering. If humanity was going to live underground, he argued, it could live well underground. Better, maybe, than it lived on the surface. He even had a word for the concept. He didn't want a shelter. He wanted an automatat, an atomic habitat, a home for the end of the world. And in a high school teacher turned home builder from the plains of Texas, he found the one man in America who had already built one. His name was Jay Swayze, and his story is the hidden hinge of this entire saga. Swayze lived in Plainview, Texas, flat land, big sky, the kind of town where a man's reputation was his business plan. When the Cuban Missile Crisis hit, the city asked him, as a respected local builder, to construct a demonstration fallout shelter. Swayze did the research. He studied blast pressure, radiation, ventilation, and somewhere in that process, something shifted in him. He stopped thinking about shelters as places to hide and started thinking about the underground as a place to live. Cooler in summer, warmer in winter. No dust storms, no tornadoes, no noise, no burglars, no neighbors. To Swayze, the surface of the earth started to look like the dangerous, inefficient option. So he did something almost nobody else would have done. He built a full luxury home underground in Plainview and moved his own wife and daughters into it. Carpets, fine furniture, painted outdoor scenes on the walls where windows would have been. His family lived beneath the Texas prairie, while their neighbors lived on top of it. Word of the underground house in Plainview spread, and it eventually reached exactly the right pair of ears. Henderson didn't just admire what Swayze had built. He bankrolled the idea. The two men joined forces under a venture called Underground World Home. And in 1964, they took their gospel to the biggest stage on the planet, the New York World's Fair. While General Motors showed off the highways of tomorrow and Bell Telephone previewed the picture phone, Henderson and Swayze invited fairgoers to descend into a fully furnished subterranean show home. Manicured garden, painted vistas, adjustable artificial daylight. Millions of people attended that fair. Visitors wandered through the underground house and marveled. The brochure pitched it as safety, privacy, and climate control in one package. The home of the future, 10 feet down. And then the future declined the invitation. The orders never came. The Cold War simmered on, but Americans, it turned out, wanted picture windows more than they wanted blast protection. The underground living revolution ended almost before it began. For Swayze, it became a niche career. For Henderson, it became something closer to a personal religion. Because here's the detail that separates Jerry Henderson from every other doomsday curious millionaire of his era. He didn't just fund the idea, he lived it. For the rest of his life, wherever Henderson put down roots, he put them down deep. He built underground at his property in Colorado. And in 1969, when he relocated to Las Vegas, a city he loved, in a state with no income tax and a long, comfortable relationship with eccentric rich men, he began planning his masterpiece. Why Las Vegas? That's worth pausing on because the choice was darker than it looks. Las Vegas in those years sat barely 65 miles from the Nevada test site, where the United States detonated hundreds of nuclear devices. In the 1950s, the city had famously turned the mushroom clouds into a tourist attraction. Casinos ran dawn parties, where guests sipped cocktails and watched the flashes light up the horizon. By the time Henderson arrived, the tests had moved underground, but the ground itself still trembled. Residents felt the shudders roll through the valley like distant freight trains. Jerry Henderson chose to build his sanctuary from nuclear war in a city that could feel nuclear weapons going off. If that sounds like madness, consider the engineering answer. He wasn't hiding from the test site. He was borrowing its logic. The tests had moved underground because underground is where blasts are contained. Henderson simply reversed the equation. If the Earth could hold an explosion in, it could keep one out. Construction began in 1974 and took 4 years. The excavation alone was a spectacle the neighbors couldn't help noticing. A hole consuming most of a 1-acre lot, sinking 26 feet down. Into that pit went a structure of reinforced concrete. Its roof carried on rows of vertical steel columns, 20 of them, engineered to shoulder the weight of the earth piled back on top. When the soil was replaced and landscaped, the scar healed over. From the street, the hole had simply vanished, an entire estate erased from view. Inside that buried vault, Henderson's team, guided by Swayze's designs and built out by contractor Frank Supancic, created the stage set of a perfect evening that would never end. The main residence below runs around 5,000 square feet, finished in the full glory of the late 1970s. Pink kitchen, bold carpets, mirrored accents, a bar ready for entertaining. Around it stretches the cavern yard, thousands more square feet of it, the 4-hole putting green. Because Jerry liked golf and saw no reason Armageddon should interrupt his short game. The pool and spa, waterfalls, the barbecue grills vented through artificial rocks, so you could sear a steak 26 feet underground without smoking yourself out. A dance floor with its own small stage, because the Hendersons love to host, and what is the point of surviving the end of the world alone? And everywhere, the great illusion, the murals. Hand-painted landscapes wrap the cavern walls. Mountains, trees, distant horizons rendered by artists working panel by panel, including scenery said to echo the places Henderson knew and loved. Combined with the fake lawn, the bark-wrapped steel trees, and that programmable sky, the effect was never meant to fool a careful observer. It was meant to do something subtler, to keep the human mind from noticing it was in a box. Swayze had learned this with his own family in Texas. People don't actually need the outdoors as much as they need the suggestion of it. A horizon line, a change of light, the implication of weather. But there's one feature of this house almost nobody talks about, and it might be the most revealing of all. The second house. Inside the same cavern, a short walk across the artificial lawn from the main residence, stands a separate guest house, its own complete dwelling with its own facade, beneath the same painted sky. Henderson didn't build a bunker for a couple. He built a buried compound for a community, however small. Even his apocalypse had a guest list. The Hendersons moved in, and here is where the story confounds every expectation. This was not a sad house. By every account, it was a party house. Jerry and his wife Mary entertained constantly, drinks by the pool, dancing on the underground dance floor, dinners under the electric stars. Guests would descend skeptical and surface delighted. The Hendersons weren't huddling in the dark waiting for sirens. They were living by their own definition, beautifully, in a sealed world where the temperature was always perfect. The evening was always young, and the outside could not get in. Then, in 1983, the outside got in anyway, through the one door no engineering can seal. Jerry Henderson died that year, in his late 70s, inside the underground home he had spent a fortune perfecting. The man who built a house to outlast the end of the world could not build one to outlast himself. There is something almost mythological about it. The king entombed in the palace he raised against fate. The bombs never came for Jerry Henderson. Time did. Mary stayed, and what happened next tells you everything about how strange this property's gravity really is. Mary eventually remarried, and the story passed down with the house is that her new husband had no intention of living like a man already buried. So rather than abandon the cavern, the household expanded upward, building out the residence on the surface. Think about that arrangement for a moment. A marriage split across two worlds, one above the dirt line and one below it, sharing a single address. The decoy house became a real one. The hidden estate gained a public face. When Mary's era ended, the property entered its wilderness years. And this is the chapter where the underground house very nearly disappeared. It cycled through owners and uses, it hosted gatherings and curiosity seekers, and eventually, in the wreckage of the late 2000s housing crash, it tumbled into foreclosure. For a stretch of time, one of the most extraordinary residences in America sat in bank inventory, listed alongside ordinary tract homes, by institutions that had no idea what they were holding. How do you appraise a buried sky? What are the comparable sales for a subterranean putting green? The honest answer was, there are none. There is no other property like it in the country, which meant, in the cold arithmetic of real estate, that it was nearly worthless. In 2014, it sold for just over $1 million. Pocket change against its construction cost in today's money, let alone its replacement cost, which brokers have estimated would run into the tens of millions if you could even get it permitted. And the buyer was not a casino mogul, not a novelty hotelier, not a doomsday prepper. The underground house was purchased by a nonprofit calling itself the Society for the Preservation of Near-Extinct Species, an organization connected to the world of cryonics, the community of scientists, futurists, and true believers who arrange to have their bodies preserved at ultra-low temperatures after death, in the hope that future technology might one day revive them. Sit with the symmetry of that for a second, because it is almost too perfect. A house built by a man who refused to accept that nuclear war should end his way of life is now stewarded by people who refuse to accept that death itself should be the end. Henderson froze a single evening in time, one eternal dusk, programmed into the ceiling. His successors want to freeze people in time. The underground house has passed from one form of defiance against oblivion to another. Whatever force draws humans to this cavern, it has remarkably consistent taste. Under its current stewardship, the foundation now operating under the name Stasis, the house was cleaned up, restored, and quietly opened to the world it was built to hide from. It has hosted tours, parties, film crews, and overnight guests who report the same disorienting magic visitors have always described. The moment an hour or two in, when you simply forget. Forget the street above. Forget the desert. Forget that the warm evening light around the pool is coming from fixtures, not a sun. Guests who sleep there talk about the silence, a depth of quiet that doesn't exist anywhere on the surface of a city, because 26 feet of earth is better soundproofing than any wall ever built. No traffic, no wind, no birds, just the hum of the systems keeping the world alive. And the condition of the place today is, frankly, the final miracle of this story. Nearly half a century on, the underground house survives not as a ruin, but as a time capsule in working order. The murals still wrap the walls. The pink kitchen still gleams. The artificial trees still stand under the artificial stars, and the sky still cycles from dawn to night at the turn of a control. Where most Cold War shelters across America have flooded, collapsed, or been filled with concrete, this one still throws pool parties. It is also, as of recently, for sale. The asking price has wandered over the years, at one point a headline grabbing $18 million, later settling into the single-digit millions, as the market keeps wrestling with the same riddle the banks faced. What is a buried world actually worth? The listing photos circulate online every few years, and every few years a new wave of people discovers, with genuine disbelief, that this place exists. Someone here eventually will hand over millions of dollars and receive the keys to a private sky. So what do we do with the story of Jerry Henderson's house? It would be easy to file it under eccentricity. Rich man, strange hobby. Las Vegas, of course. But the underground house deserves a more honest reading because it is one of the purest pieces of paranoia architecture ever completed in America. Every era builds monuments to what it worships. The Cold War built monuments to what it feared. Missile silos, blast doors, continuity of government bunkers carved into mountains. And on Spencer Street, one man's insistence that fear and beauty could share a roof. Most fallout shelters said, "We expect to suffer." Henderson said something far more unsettling and far more human. "We expect to continue, cocktails included, and the longer you look at it, the less it feels like a relic." We live again in an age of bunkers, billionaires buying remote compounds, survival condos selling out in converted missile silos, Luxury doomsday is real estate quietly booming with every unstable headline. Henderson wasn't a punchline from a forgotten decade. He was early. The underground house is the ancestor of every plush apocalypse retreat being poured in concrete right now. And it asks the same question they all ask. The question buried at the heart of this whole story. When people of unlimited means imagine the worst, why is their first instinct not to fix the world above, but to build a smaller, safer, prettier one below? Down on Spencer Street, the answer still glows under the desert. The stars come on when someone flips the switch. The painted mountains hold their painted horizon. The pool waits, perfectly warm, under a sunset that has lasted since 1978. Jerry Henderson is gone. The war he feared never came, and the little world he built to survive it is still down there in the dark. Still comfortable, still strange, still ready. So here's the question I keep turning over, and I want to know your answer. If you had Henderson's fortune and Henderson's fears, could you do it? Could you actually live your life under a painted sky? If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves discovering extraordinary places. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next adventure.